and always will, is about moving humanity forward. And remember, folks, every act of kindness is a little love we leave behind. Hey, folks, the man with the pinky ring and the New York thing, forget about it, Bad Brad Berkwitt. And you're watching another episode of the Bad Brad Berkwitt Show on the Ringside Report web TV channel. Now, make sure you follow me on Twitter at BadBradRSR. Again, that's at BadBradRSR. And I am now also on Post with the same handle at BadBradRSR. As well, check out my great writing team on ringsidereport.com. All right, folks, today I have a very special guest, and he ties in with my shadow box back here and my 20 years and 28 days in the Navy, because he is a fellow shipmate who did a career in the Navy as well, 20 years. Okay, and he's got a lot to talk about, and we have a lot to discuss. And our very first 360 conversation. He is a 5-time New York Times best-selling author whose latest book was published in 2022 that went on to be a fan favorite. And it's called They Want to Kill Americans, the Malicious, Terrorists, and the Deranged Ideology of the Trump Insurgency. Oh, there's that word, Trump. As well, as I said earlier, he is a retired Navy Senior Chief, CTI, which I is for interpreter, and I was a CT as well. So we have that in common. He's a terrorism expert. He is most recently as well a Ukrainian legionnaire. And folks, this gentleman is a true patriot. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to my show, the one, the only, Malcolm Nance. Forget about it. All right, well, first of all, Malcolm, good afternoon your way. Welcome to the show.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. I always start out like this. If I have anything wrong in my notes, which is the military in me, say, hey, Brad, it's actually this, because I want my conversations to be as factually correct as they can be.
Sure.
So let's do this. Let's start at the beginning, because we're going to do a 360 conversation today. Right. It looks like you were born in Philadelphia. Is that correct?
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I was born in the Philadelphia Naval Hospital.
Okay.
Which is a big old facility that they just recently tore down and turned into an Eagles training site.
Okay. Talk about, you're a guy a couple years older than me, not much, from the 60s. So talk about growing up in that area, because that's a great area.
Yeah. Okay. So is that the question? You want me to talk about growing up in Philly?
Yep.
Well, we came from Philly when I was pre-kindergarten. And we moved from San Francisco. My dad was stationed in Alameda, and he got assigned to, this had to have been around 1964, 65. And he got assigned to running the boiler, being one of the chiefs at the boiler tech school in Philadelphia. For those kids that are too young to understand the words I'm using, a boiler technician is a guy who worked on ship engineering systems pre-1980s. All ship engineering systems were actually run by steam, and they would fire off coal or oil to boil water, and they turn that water into superheated steam, and that steam would run the engines and the propellers and things like that, and provide water on ships and things like that. So back then, that rating was called boiler technician, or BT.
Right.
And my dad had been in that since the early 50s.
So you're a Navy brat. You're a Navy brat. Didn't know that.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm a military brat going back to 1864. Okay. That's the earliest that we can find. Two Nances. Our great-great-grandfather and his brother ran away from slavery and joined the 111th U.S. Colored Troops, and then the 9th Cavalry Buffalo Soldiers, then two Nances in World War I, my grandfather and granduncle, and then my dad, he joined the Navy in 1944 at 15 years old. He lied about his age, but he was 6'1" and huge, so they were like, we don't care, so he went out and he was riding ships out in the Pacific in World War II. And then myself and all 5 of my brothers served in the Navy.
Okay. Looks like you graduated high school around 79. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
You
So
know,
what I want to ask you is, you went in the Navy in 81. Looking at your bio, 81 to 2001, you did your 20.
yeah.
So there was a couple of years before you went in the Navy. So
About
what
a
were you
year.
doing in that period?
Oh, about a year.
Okay.
I was bumming. I was working. I worked at bookstores in Philadelphia.
Okay.
And actually, I was in the Navy back in those days in 1980 in what was called the Delayed Entry Program, the DEP.
Mhm.
So I had been going to classes and doing rating related, coursework and everything from, I want to say, I remember going to the recruiter in July of 1980, because it's an inevitable thing. In the Nance family, you're going in the Navy or the military, right? Just done. And so, I went into the delayed entry program, and then I shipped to boot camp in January of 1981. So it wasn't very long.
Okay, I got you. Okay.
And then, geez, I mean, just I went to Great Lakes, Illinois in winter.
So did I.
Oh, Jesus Christ. And that's back when there was no climate change, right? I mean,
Yeah, who you telling
it
about?
was hot,
Who you
it was cold. Do you remember that we
Yeah.
would have like chains in front of the dining hall,
Yes,
and it would just
yes.
be covered with ice?
I
And we'd
went
have to
5
use
years after you.
baseball.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, that was still the cold old days. Oh,
We
yeah.
fell out
Yeah,
of
yeah,
ranks.
yeah.
It was so cold, we fell out of ranks and
I
ran
did not
back.
know. I did not know there was a training facility in San Diego.
Yeah, I know.
My dad had tricked me into thinking, oh, you have to go to Great Lakes,
Yeah.
That's the real Navy. Yeah. Okay.
Exactly.
They
Now,
got me good.
I want to read something for the viewers to give them a little bit of insight and tell me if
Sure.
this is correct. So it looks like you went to West Catholic Boys High School and you studied Spanish, French, and Latin. And if this is correct, it looks like you took advantage of free classes at South Philadelphia High School in languages for Russian and Chinese. Is all of that correct?
Yeah, that's true. It starts a little earlier though.
Okay.
In fact, I went in 8th grade. I was in Catholic school, and they found out that there was a magnet program, an advanced program for people who wanted to learn foreign languages, and I wanted to learn foreign languages. And so I went to a public school there in South Philly, not South Philly High School, it's another public school, middle school, that was actually, going beyond the French and the Spanish. So I took Spanish, French, and Latin there at that school. And then when I transferred over to high school, in my 9th grade, I had Spanish and of course, I'm Roman Catholic. So we already had a measure of Latin. They were still doing Latin masses, even though the hippie masses would show up like a week, a year later, with the guitars in the church and real animals bought out at Christmas, all those things. But so yeah, I learned actually quite a bit of Latin. I had a pretty good grounding of Latin. So,
Okay.
And then when I went to high school, I took mainly Spanish, but then I went to South Philly High School. And this is funny. You would be really fascinated at some of the ridiculous criticism that I get from these right-wing crazies. And they were like, you took Russian on Saturdays in a high school for free. What kind of loser does that? Well, in 1979, at the height of the Cold War, a loser that's probably going into the intelligence community or the diplomatic corps. And Chinese, no one took Chinese back then. In fact, I started out in Mandarin. And then they switched instructors, and she only spoke Cantonese. So I started with Mandarin and then switched to Cantonese, which are 2 different Chineses, right? I mean, and you know what Chinese taught me? I'll never take Chinese. That's what Chinese taught me. It is a hard language. You know, I applaud anyone that can go to China or can go to China, right? You and I can't go to China. But anyone that can go to China and actually learn that with a level of expertise is really amazing.
Okay. And obviously, I know this because you were a CTI. So obviously, that's where you picked it as when you came in and when I came in, we had 5 different CT fields you could go in. Now there's, I think, 4 or less because they merged. They got rid of some. They got rid of my rating. But
what was your rating?
I was CTA.
You're an 8-brancher, right?
Yeah, I was an 8-brancher.
Wait, then who's doing 8-branch stuff?
They put it into, that's what, where I get attacked is they know how to read. One guy told me, I know how to read a uniform. I said, no, you fucking don't. Because I was a CT. He said, you were a yeoman. I said, no, I was a CT. So, but what they did was they got rid of CT. I retired in 06. 07, they got rid of CTAs. And now they gave it to yeoman. So yeomans are now TS.
Cleared yeoman. They just made one.
Yeah, but I didn't agree with that because the things that we did, I worked at the courier service and all that stuff. They didn't have that background. They didn't have intelligence background. But hey, that was their decision. I got nothing to do with it. So let me ask you this. What is the biggest thing you miss about the Navy? And what is the least thing you missed about the Navy?
That's funny because, you know, you and I were on Twitter battling some morons this morning.
Yes.
You know, the funny thing is, and this is where if you've spent 20 years in the Navy and you took the job very seriously, I took the job very seriously. And, you know, as my brother, who was a senior chief nuke, once said to me, he goes, you really got under these guys' skins when you were in the Navy because they're criticizing you 25 years later, right? Mm-hmm. And it's just like, yeah, there's always losers that are going to be out there. But I had a great career. I had a fabulous, fun career. Yes, there were ups and downs. I made chief very fast. And my dad, who was a master chief in the Navy, boiler technician, one of the first black master chiefs, and one of the first master chiefs. That rank didn't exist when he came in the Navy. It was added, I think, in the late 50s, early 60s. And I remember he said when I made chief, I got selected at my 7.5 year.
Nice.
First time selectee. And he was just like, I was like, yeah, Dad, made chief. And he was like, Chief, you just got in. How long have you been in? I go, 7 years. I'll be put my anchors on at 8 years. And he goes, they're gonna hate you.
Yeah.
They're gonna hate you. He goes, you've broken their little system. 12 years is usually the earliest you can make chief. On average, I think it's 12 to 14 years in most ratings. And he goes, you just burned through their little system. I was like, yeah, whatever. You know, I was sort of like Brad Pitt, all right, in the closet in the movie Burn After Reading, right? He's sitting there with his head open, the world's going straight and people are going to shoot him in the head, right? Right. So, but I think that if you understand the values, and I came from a very deep old Navy family, and my dad taught me to shine shoes as a sea cadet, right? When I was 13, you know, polish leather. Right? No patent leather, and get my gig lines straight and fold my tie correctly. So I was Seaman of the Month a lot. And, you know, I took it very seriously and I missed that. But here's the kicker. I mean, I retired as senior chief. You know, there's very few master chief slots in our job. And I could have gotten it next time around if I had taken this one job and stayed past 20 years. But what I miss is one, I miss being a chief. Being a chief is not a rank. It is a career. It is a brotherhood and a group of initiated people.
I was just going to say that,
yeah. You know, and I knew I could rely on any chief anywhere in the world. Knew I could rely. And I'm one of the last of the old school chiefs, you know, not the guys who actually beat people and everything. But my year was the last year they did the real initiations, the ones where you ate things and puked and you were beaten and slapped with shillelaghs and all sorts of stuff. And it was fun and interesting. But the next year was the year of tailhook. And that was for your listeners, that was a scandal in which officers were sexually assaulting women officers and doing all these horrible things to women. And the Navy came down hard, Navy-wide, on sexual assault, on depredations, on initiations. That next year, they had a dinner. That was it. They had a dinner in uniform. Then you got pinned. They had no initiation.
Who was it saying about in Kelso?
I don't recall. It might have been Kelso. It might have been his first year.
Okay.
But it caused a credible uproar. And I had gone through 24 hours of getting whipped, slapped, beat, puked. And then at the end of it, you read the Chief's Creed, and they tell you about all of these depredations are going to pale in comparison to the things that people will demand you do during your career. Yeah. That was like, wow, that was a mind-blowing statement. And then it happened, right? I had lots of horrible, experiences with a bunch of jerks, and that's what I don't miss. And I get it now, now that I'm out of the Navy. And, the funny thing is that there's this entire class of people that their lives have stopped at the end of their naval service.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, look at you. I mean, we're both retired, but we use that. We know that 20 years was our grounding for the rest of our lives.
Yes.
But you're not going to go around and demand people, call you YN1 or YNC or whatever, and go get you. Although the other day I did on Twitter make an insult where I said, "Now go get a man a cup of coffee,"
Yeah,
which is a very cheap thing, right?
Oh, I know.
But what I like to do is I like to bring the values of being a chief out into the civilian world to show, that you don't have to be a jerk, but you do have to get stuff done. I was a acting first sergeant of a Ukrainian Special Forces battalion, a Legion Special Forces battalion.
Right.
And I tore through these people like a chief. I mean, I was right back into it. Right. We set up, even setting up our bivouacs or our safe houses or whatever, constantly emphasizing cleanliness, constantly emphasizing safety of the weapons, constantly emphasizing be prepared to get your gear and move out. And the Ukrainians are like, damn, you kick ass hard. And I'm like, you don't put freaking rockets next to the fire. Okay. You don't do stupid things. And right. As I like to say, I recalibrate the stupid. So an expanded picture of that was the best thing that I had done. But my dad was like that. And my brother, who was a senior chief, was exactly like that. And we understood where we were all coming from. And my dad was sort of a jerk when I was a teenager and a sea cadet. And then when I became a chief, I was like, oh, you were just being a chief. And he's like, yeah, well, what'd you think I was? I was a master chief. And I was like, oh, sorry for all the trouble I caused you in high school.
I hear you.
You actually set me on a correct path and taught me to understand the value of what I like to say. Can we cuss on your channel?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. The value of get the fuck to work. All right. And then the next day, go get me a goddamn cup of coffee.
Exactly. Let me ask you this briefly. Immunizations. When you and I were in, it wasn't a fucking debate. We got the shots. You had the bicillin shot they gave in the thigh, which you had to roll around. It was a fucking golf ball in your ass or thigh, whatever.
Yeah.
And if you were top bunk and you got out of the bunk the next morning in boot camp, your one leg went like this, and the other leg went. I've never met anybody in my 20 years.
Do you remember this shot was given to us? I remember standing in line in Great Lakes. It was winter. And they were giving us all the hypodermics in the arm, the double air guns in the arm.
Yep.
And then they handed you that long silver hypodermic, like you call it, bicillin, right? It's penicillin and whatever. And they made you hold it.
Yep.
Right? Yep. And I was like, what the hell? And the needle was like a 5-inch needle, right?
Yep.
And then they were like, give it to me. Boom, right, and not in the thigh. We had it in the upper ass, right?
No, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah. No, I'm saying your leg went one way.
Yeah, but I understood that. This is World War II level in inoculation. to where they had to process millions upon millions of men, and they didn't play any games, and they didn't give a fuck whether you were allergic to anything.
Right.
So penicillin also, it taught you not to get a disease where you'd need that shot again.
No shit. But what I want to ask you is briefly, this bullshit that you see today, it wasn't a choice. I don't recall any sailor ever saying, I'm not going to get an immunization. They weren't happy about them, but we took them because we knew, one, it took care of us and it took care of our fucking shipmates. But now you see in this world that we live in, not just in the military, but out 30 years ago would never been a fucking issue.
And my favorite part of this is that these guys bitch and complain about a woke military. You anti-vaxxers are creating an entirely new strain of the military where you don't have to follow orders. What's next? Getting out of bed? Look, this isn't the Dutch army, all right? It's not a union. There's no union voting for all of these things. So, but it's just, they're sickening. Can't stand anti-vaxxers.
Yeah.
Anybody who's an anti-vaxxer, I have no respect for. We're now getting outbreaks of polio, measles, diseases which were eliminated in the United States because a bunch of right-wing crazies, and they're all right-wing libertarian crazies, have decided that they don't want their children to get anything. Well, get measles. Measles literally causes your child's brain to boil in its own liquids, temperatures going to 105 degrees. Then they die a painful, horrible death. And you go, well, I want my freedom. That ain't freedom, okay? Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right, is in our founding documents. But there's a reason we have a Surgeon General and he's in the Navy. Because back then, only Navy doctors were providing medicine when your happy asses came over on a ship to steal Indian land. But, I mean, the point is, get with the program. And if you don't want to get with the program, understand the consequences of what's going to happen.
And do you agree? This is my opinion. I want to see if you agree. I agree. Now, I don't know if this is 100% factual, but I saw a month or two ago that the Biden administration, if this is the case, I disagree with them, that they were going to overturn it because, Cruz and all these assholes were like, they shouldn't kick them out. No, you should get kicked out if you don't take your damn shots, especially when you have to go on a ship. I mean, period. But I don't agree with that.
That was a couple of weeks ago. And what they were going to do is they were going to hold up and collapse the budget. Collapse the budget. All right. And it's easier because you know what they're going to do. All right. They're going to let these people go ahead and they're not going to get their vaccinations. And then what they're going to do is when they get COVID and they get too sick, you just out-process them.
Yeah.
Right. Not medically retire them. Okay. But just say, and get rid of them. I think, and to be quite honest, between you and me, the Marine Corps, of all the places to have their little rebellion in the Marine Corps, I thought you guys were supposed to be hard. You're a bunch of wusses. You can't even take a goddamn a 22 gauge needle, which you can't even feel.
Right.
Right. Less than a second injection. And you're like, oh, that's too much. That's demanding too much of my freedom. Really? They're asking you to be pierced by bullets or to have your body dissected by artillery.
Thank you.
That's not too much to ask.
Thank you.
I find this all very fascinating.
Exactly. Trump, talking point. Two things I want to see if you remember. These are two things that pissed me off. There's a million things that pissed me off, but I want to see if you remember them because this is your wheelhouse too. When he ran in 15 and 16, he made a comment, and I don't think anybody picked up on it really in the media, and I screamed about it from the minute I heard it. He made the comment that the military doesn't win anymore. And when he said that, I was like, you motherfucker, that's so disrespectful to our troops, all branches, that are in harm's way, saying we don't win anymore. Coming from a guy who's a 5-time draft dodger, okay, that can't tell you what foot and what bone spurs are, and not just him, is coked out of his fucking mind son, who knows nothing about the military, doubles down on this bullshit. I know Navy SEALs, I know this, I know that. That was the first one that pissed me off. I wanted to see if you remembered. And the second one was when he went to President Bush's funeral, and he came down to fucking in the chapel. And he had the military aide with the rope around his arm, probably was a lieutenant in the Navy. He handed him, like he was a fucking valet, his overcoat. Didn't say thank you, handed it to him. And I was like, first of all, that's not what he's there for. He's there to escort you and your wife and dignitaries down to the thing. He handed him his fucking coat, which he could have, before he walked into, inside the church, he could have given it to whoever and said, here's my coat. But no, he had to hand it to him like he was his personal valet. And he's not his personal valet. Do you remember those two things out of curiosity?
Of course I do. Of course I do. These things were huge. I mean, but let's step away from Trump. The problem here for you and I, and we got into it this morning with some of these idiots on the internet, are the people who say they served or served in the military, some of whom were very high ranking. He had a great approval amongst flag-ranked officers. How in God's name was this even possible?
Yeah.
You were first class, I was a chief. These are the idiots. Guys like him were the idiots we were on the watch for.
Yep.
The stupid guy, the guy who lied pathologically, the guy who would tell us fantastical goddamn stories. And, he's Richie Rich and he's got all this stuff, right? The guy who would endanger us with his stupidity. And here are these people lining up at his feet thinking what? That they're going to get money from him? They're going to get honors from him? They're going to get, some sort of benefit from him by him insulting John McCain. I taught at Sears School for my last 4 years in the military. I read John McCain's original flimsy pink copy of his hand-typed debriefing of what happened to him in Hanoi Hilton.
I declassified in 92 over at DIA 6 months. POWMIA documents that him and Kerry and all them. I saw his shit. And Stockdale, too, who was, Perot's vice president. The shit that they went through.
Stockdale would come into my house come into Sears School all the time.
Yeah.
He's just great guy, Admiral Stockdale.
Yeah. But where you were going with that
went through hell.
Yeah.
And here he comes and goes,
yeah,
I still see it on the internet. Oh, he talked. No, he didn't. All right. I went through the whole debrief. We teach the people. We have a school. It's on McCain Boulevard, right? To teach people what to say, when to say it, because there are times you must talk. There are times you must say something. Only we teach you what to say so that something is worthless, right? The first thing we teach you to say is, you were torturing me. I'd say anything. And now it becomes useless. But these people and they're just disgusting motivations, on what they thought is supposed to be their idea of what heroism is. Fat, size 52 pants wearing pig of a man who is a moron, that his father died and $230 million fell into his lap. This is your hero?
Yep.
This is who you like? I mean, and you saw these guys who were attacking me today. I was saying to this one guy who claimed he had served with me in the Navy. First off, uses an avatar.
Right.
Second off, won't say what his name is.
I know.
Turns out somebody said his avatar was one of those computer-generated faces that's actually given away for free on the internet. Comes there and says, oh, I served with you at this command, and wouldn't state the command.
Of course.
Right? You were hated, blah, blah, blah. And then when you ask him a question, what was your command? What was your rating? What was your job? And then he goes, okay, I admit that I never served with you, but my roommate did, right?
Yeah.
Your Canadian girlfriend that no one ever sees, right? You can't meet her. She's up in Toronto, right? Or out in the Arctic Circle, riding a canoe with the Inuits. I mean, these people will, I said this to him, I was trying to be nice. If you served, do not dishonor your service and the other people who have served honorably by debasing yourself here for Donald Trump or Elon Musk, or the newest group of people that are attacking them. And it's like, you will degrade and spit and on your own service? For who? For who? I honor your service. Good job, shipmate. If you, in fact, retired or got out honorably, right? But what you're saying is, and this is this guy, they keep throwing this naval security group command, and it's like had over 10,000 people in it all over the world and on every ship and squadrons all around the world. It's like saying, okay, Colin Powell was in the military at the time I was, so I served with Colin Powell.
Right.
I know what he wants for coffee, right?
Yep.
No, you don't even know what kind of coffee he wants.
Exactly.
You as a yeoman would know. He'd probably be stationed in the Pentagon.
Not yeoman, CT.
That's right. A Brancher. Brancher would definitely freaking know.
Right.
Right?
Exactly.
Only a guy allowed into the Situation Room to bring him a goddamn cup of coffee.
Exactly.
So, yeah, but the debasing themselves part, I do not understand it, Brad. I just don't.
I know.
Why do they dishonor themselves so badly?
I know. Let me ask you this. See a lot of clips where you talk about race, and I want to ask you this as an African-American man.
Okay.
So when you see the Candace Owens and the Larry Elders and the Leo Terrells and people like Kanye West and these fucking people that drive me nuts, that sell out the African-American race to make a buck, lie and say that George Floyd died from drugs when fucking Chauvin killed him with the knee, but don't care. What goes through your mind?
You know, Candace Owens said that, right?
Yep.
Who was it that recently said that?
Kanye reiterated what Candace Owens started.
I always tell this story. I like to teach, and I'm a bit of a historian. I mean, I've written 10 books, most of which are histories or analyses. And, you know, when the slave catchers in the 1800s would go out to catch slaves on slave patrols, they always bought a slave with them, right?
Yeah.
And this guy would get fed better food or beans or have some favoritism to them, but they would let him go like a dog. And he would go out and he would find these clusters of slaves, all right? And they would communicate with each other. And I don't know if you guys notice it, African Americans have a code. If we see each other on the street, I saw a woman in a town called Ubud in the mountains of Indonesia, and we saw this African American woman. We always say the same thing: "Hey, how you doing? How you doing? Where are you from?" That's IFF. That's identification, friend or foe. All right. And it's us assessing. It's in our blood now. There used to be a magazine called The Code, about African-American family. And slave catchers would send these guys out and they would not get the code right? The slaves who were on the run could understand, hey, there's something wrong about you, right? Slave catchers are down the road and you magically appear and say, oh, I'm gonna run away too, right? And if you couldn't tell where you were from in that immediate area, they would avoid you. But they bought this person to catch people who were fighting for their freedom.
Yeah.
To take away the freedom for others. Those people are 5, 6, maybe 10. Maybe they had 100 of them in the White House. There's 42 million African Americans. And Republicans think people are stupid. And that one person, Candace Owens, who is a moron. By the way, the same woman who won an equal opportunity complaint.
With the Democrats.
Right, when she was a Democrat.
Yep.
Kanye West is let's just be honest. The man, in my opinion, is mentally deranged. He just is.
But I don't give him a full pass for it.
Oh, he doesn't get a pass for it, but he knows what he's saying.
Yes.
He thinks that money has freed him to be as racist and anti-Semitic as possible. Look, I grew up in an Orthodox Jewish neighborhood of Philadelphia, hard Orthodox. It still is, out in that part of Winfield. The first foreign language I ever learned was Yiddish. The first decrypt of a code I ever did was Hebrew to Yiddish off of a newspaper. Wow. Every culture is different, but why he has to attack them personally for that, right? And the whole, hey, let's talk about Hitler's being right, and wearing that crazy gimp mask that he wears. Hey, there's a mental defect in this for sure. But That has been in his head. And I don't know where he got it from. His mother was a very genteel, middle class. Was she a university professor?
Can't remember.
Or a high school teacher of some type. But she was very genteel, upper middle class African-American woman. And he was never from the hood. Kanye West was never from the hood.
But he wants to tell you he is.
Neither was I. Yeah, I didn't live in the projects of South Philly. We're like my cousins. But this guy has decided, he and the people who are around him, the Trumps, the Elon Musk, have decided they are the arbiters of the African-American community.
Yeah.
And that, the other 39, what is it? 41,995,005 of us, 95 of us can be discounted because he's got 5 crazy people.
Yeah.
Speaking for them. It's sad. It's sad is what it really is. It's a disgrace. It's not just a disgrace to their race, because you shouldn't even have to bring race into it. They're disgraceful as human beings.
They are. But it disgusts me because the African American community faces enough in this country, and for years, and still in 2022, they don't need, the African American community doesn't need people like this, Candace Owens, and making false narratives. And where I really get pissed off is they'll get elderly African American people, especially down south, killed over this fucking hateful rhetoric that they want to sell to the Republican Party, and that they double and triple down. What I want to ask you next is I want to go into Ukraine a little bit before we segue into the second part. In layman terms, briefly, to the person that says, because you were over there and we both stand with Ukraine, but for the layman person that says, and they don't even have to, I know it's probably more Republican, but it says, hey, why are we helping the Ukraine when we have so many problems in America and spending money for the war over there when we need to be spending money here? What would you say to those people in layman terms?
Okay, let me not talk to the Trump voters here, because they don't believe in democracy.
Okay.
What happened with the Republican Party, and I've written several books on it, 4 New York Times bestsellers in a row, just about Trump and what's happening to the Republican Party and their influence with Russia, right? The other bestseller was on ISIS. But what's happened here is that they no longer believe in democracy. They no longer believe in representative democracy. What they believe is in an autocracy, which means that they will win an election and they'll make sure it's the last election, right? Sort of like Star Wars, right? Remember in, what was it, episode 1, how does democracy end? To thunderous applause, right? They will vote democracy out, and then they will give themselves the rights they think they should have and remove all the other rights from the others. So that being said, Ukraine was a country that held 9 democratic elections in a row. 3 times they elected pro-Moscow presidents, right? Then when that guy took away all of their aspirations, Yanukovych, and said that he was going to turn them into a Russian satellite, cut all ties to the European Union, cut all trade with the European Union, and make them part, like Lukashenko in Belarus, make them part of a Russian-Ukrainian axis led by Vladimir Putin. They rose up. Now, that sounds vaguely familiar. That may have happened, I don't know, in this country 248 years ago, because they didn't have representative democracy and were about to be turned into a dictatorship. And what did they do? They protested peacefully in the streets until he got his police out and just started killing them. 109 people were massacred in the Maidan uprising, and it managed to push this guy out. This guy was an oligarch. If I've got homework assignment for your listeners, if you go on Netflix, you can actually watch the TV show Zelensky starred in called Servant of the People. And he actually went in his show. He's a comedian or a school teacher who wins and becomes president. And they film on all the sites of Yanukovych's house and his working office. And it's so insanely luxurious. And none of it's a lie. It's like, oh, well, they flew in all this ebony from Mozambique and they made these steps and then they ripped them down because they weren't to spec and they did it again. And it only cost $1 billion to do this house. And they're like, you're joking. They're in the actual house. They are describing what actually happened. And Zelensky's taken over. And when Zelensky became president, he goes, that's exactly what happened. They brought me back to the same place. And goes, you're responsible for all of this now. You're the president. And he's like, should we tear it down? It's a museum of excess now. When you're in Kyiv, you can see that. Ukraine is the eastern wall of democracy, holding Russia. You guys might remember Russia. They were a communist country. You hated them. They had a secret police called the
Trump.
KGB.
So Trump.
Yeah, and now they're led by an ex-KGB officer who has made himself president for life, who bought Donald Trump lock, stock, and barrel. And now Republicans love him because he's a dictator. And they fundamentally want to be autocrats. They don't care about American democracy. No. They want what I call a constitutional dictatorship, where the trappings of the Constitution exist. And the dictatorship is they'll take those given rights, where you call rights, they'll take them away from whoever the minority is. And this is another fun thing, Brad. They always say, we're not a democracy, we're a republic. Well, you're just too stupid to go look at a dictionary. Right? A democracy is a democrat is I'm sorry, not democracy. A republic is a democracy led by majority rule in which the rights of the minority parties are protected within the framework of government.
Correct.
Oh, but it's a democracy. No, it's not. We're a republic. Okay, we're a republic, but you're still an idiot. I mean, this is the problem with these guys. Is that they take the little bit of knowledge, we used to call them sea lawyers, right?
Yep.
A little bit of knowledge. I read the UCMJ once when I was getting busted for drunk driving. So I know my rights. It's like, yeah, if you're getting busted for drunk driving because you lost those rights.
Right.
So this is how they view government, representative government.
Okay, let me ask you this one last point on Ukraine, then we're going to transition to the second half.
Sure.
One issue I did have with Ukraine is this, and I'm sure you're aware of it. I would like you to speak briefly about it if you know about it.
Okay.
Early on, you saw Africans boarding a bus, and they were students over there, and they were treated very poorly. And I took note of that, and it bothered me. It got a little bit of press, and then it went away. Was that? I don't paint with broad strokes. Was that a small group of people that were racist, or what was that? Because it did happen.
I actually had a discussion about this with the Minister of Information and Culture in Ukraine.
Okay.
Right? The day it was happening. And I have since come to learn some of the details of it, that if you understood, you would go, well, shit happens, right? First off, there was a general order in the state of national security, national emergency, that said transport within Ukraine, okay, and from the major cities. Those cities were Sumy, Kharkiv, Mariupol, Melitopol, Kherson. These were the immediate front line cities. That the transportation of refugees, okay, from those cities will be women and children and elderly only. Is a law. As soon as the war shooting started, Zelensky signed the National Security Act, right? The state of emergency in Ukraine existed, right? Many of these students were, I know because I had been all around Ukraine for a month. Many of those students were in Sumy, which was far east, very close to the Russian border. It's a direct road from there to Belgorod, about 50 kilometers to the Russian major military, their version of Fort Bragg to Belgorod. And getting from Sumy to Kyiv, it's only one train, or you have to take a car, and then it's going to be like 6 hours of driving, right? In a country that is now, can I point out to you, under incessant air attack. A full-scale invasion is taking place on 3 sides of the nation. It's a country of 40 million Ukrainians, okay? You have these trade school students from India, like down in Ivano-Frankivsk. It wasn't just blacks, right? The accusations are from, it was Indian subcontinent people, and they're African, a huge African community, African trade community in Ternopil, which is near Lviv.
Okay.
But those people who had gotten from Ternopil to the border and wanted to cross or get the trains at that point and cross the border were being stopped. They were being stopped. Okay. All right. And they were being stopped because the order was women and children and elderly cross this border.
But see, but there's a case of the media not reporting this full story then.
Of course not. And I had a talk with MSNBC. I had talks with people. And I go, whoa. I said, are you aware? Are you aware right now there's 2 million people at the Polish-Ukrainian border? And the Polish weren't just opening all the gates and just letting you walk across. They weren't. They had to process you. ICRC, Red Cross, World Food Program, the UNRWA, right? The United Nations Refugee Agency. They tag you when you come across those borders. You have to have documents. You have to have money. You got to give transport. Look, I've been to every crossing over there. Medica crossing, Krakovets, some of the smaller border crossings, the border crossing going over from Uzhgorod to Slovakia to Hungary. Hey, millions were trying to get through that border. Okay, millions. Okay. And here's where I got a bone to pick. Okay. So I was starting to see these criticisms from like Nigerian billionaires. Oh, you're not treating our people fairly. Oh, our students are there. You're not helping them out. Guess who didn't lift a finger? Not one of them sent buses. Not one of them sent aid to Ukraine or Poland to help get to get the people who did cross the borders. I saw one instance that I thought was straight up racism. Okay. On television, it was a Kyiv train station. I don't know the circumstances, but in the end, the woman got on. It was an an African woman with 2 children, and they were holding her back from getting on the train. And I called the Minister of Culture himself, because he was a friend of mine. I became friends with him. And the Minister of Information and Culture is the guy who's responsible for the image of Ukraine. Right. And I said, whatever's happening has to stop. Within an hour, the Foreign Ministry and President Zelensky's office had an order, no matter what their race, color, or whatever. If they are women and children and elderly, over the age of 60, they go first. Here's another part of the national security order. No men who were Ukrainian passport holders, not residents, Ukrainian passport holders are allowed to cross any border out of Ukraine. You're not allowed to leave the country. It was, after a while, they relaxed that to be men with 3 children could visit their families and offer to emigrate, because they didn't do a full, 4 million men, 5 million men mobilization. Okay. But hey, these are the hard realities. Let me tell you something. We turned back in the United States ships full of Jews and sent them to their death.
Yeah, FDR, the Village of the Damned, right? Or I think it was called.
It was because the America First movement in the United States was saying you're allowing Jews to come in here.
Yeah, that was under FDR. That was under FDR. Yeah.
Oh, by the way, 5 million refugees crossed that border.
Okay, let's do this, Malcolm. Let's go to the second half. These are real quick, fun, random questions. All right. No right or wrong. Favorite genre of movies?
Oh, that's funny. It's hard because I like action and adventure, but I like drama too. You know what? Here's my my fluffy side. I like costume dramas. Okay. Right? I prefer costume dramas with action and adventure in them, like, I don't know, Zulu or Master and Commander. But I do like historical dramas.
Okay. What's a movie you could put in over and over again, never gets old?
Anytime?
Yep.
Anywhere, any minute, any point in the movie? Casablanca, without any question.
Okay.
Casablanca, if there's any one film that's impacted me more, certainly now that I'm fighting for democracy, we're all fighting for democracy. Okay. That film was about fighting for democracy in 1952.
Yes, it was. Favorite all-time, anytime TV show?
Favorite all-time, anytime TV show. All right. I'm going to give you two. First off, there's one. I just don't watch it too much because it's so good. There was a TV show done in the mid-'60s called The Prisoner.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Patrick McGowan, the guy who played Secret Agent Man,
Yep.
plays an unnamed British
I
spy
know the show.
who's kidnapped and taken to an island.
Yep.
17 episodes.
Yep.
And they try to break him. And now I taught at SEER School, at the Survival, Evasion, Resistance, and Escape School. This show could be used for training. I mean, this guy's just a brilliant resistor. They never break him. You never learn his name. You'll never learn why he resigned from the intelligence services. And you really don't find out who kidnapped him. It's a brilliant show. That one, and then, Doctor Who.
Okay. Favorite musical band?
Favorite musical band in the world? And believe it or not, I like obscure, crazy music. So there is an English band called Everything But the Girl.
Okay.
And their early stuff is really just the best. Not their techno stuff, but their early stuff. Love Everything But the Girl. Gotcha.
Favorite noise or sound you like to hear?
Favorite noise? This is really weird now that you mention it. I like church bells. Grew up in Northwest Philly and in Winfield. We had old traditional churches. They're Episcopalian, which means they were the English, type Anglican churches and Catholic churches. And I like church bells. Okay. I've heard church bells in two instances that were really interesting. One in celebration, one in warning. And the church bell warning thing is, you can tell the difference because they just clang it. It's not like trying to make nicey noise. It's just like, uh-oh, that doesn't sound right. And then celebration church bells, especially if it's carillon at a wedding or something.
Okay. Now flip that.
That's funny. No one has ever asked me that question.
And now we're going to flip that. What's your least favorite noise or sound?
Oh, Jesus Christ. Donald Trump's voice.
Okay. Yeah.
It's just it's the sound of stupid.
Yes.
Turned into an audio, file.
Favorite vacation destination?
Oh, that's ridiculous. Who can say that? I mean, that I have gone to or I could go to, because there's a big.
Where's a place you'd like to go to?
Paris. No question.
Okay.
Paris. Anytime, anywhere.
All right.
I can go for the weekend for coffee. Fly back.
Okay. If you could meet one person from any walk of life, dead or alive.
Oh, that's not fair.
Who would you like to meet? And what would either be a question or some things you like to talk to that person about?
You got to break that into two. You got to say dead and then alive.
No.
All right. Because one person throughout all of history.
Yep.
Jesus Christ.
Yep.
All right. Here's where I'm going to freak you all out. I have a Substack, right? malcolmnance.substack.com. You guys should join, because Twitter's on its way out. And the mechanics of Twitter are breaking down. And so this is where I do my long format discussions, where I'm going to post this on Substack when we're done. And I recently wrote an article about Joe Rochefort, Commander Joe Rochefort, who later retired as a captain. But he is the man who was a Japanese linguist, was a liaison officer to Tokyo in the 1930s. As Japan was becoming a rising power, and used to play poker with some English-speaking Japanese officers, including a captain at that time, whose name was Isoroku Yamamoto. So Joe Rochefort and his another liaison officer, Captain Layton, if I'm not mistaken, at the time, were poker-playing partners with the man that was become the supreme commander of Japanese forces in the Pacific, and who would be responsible for organizing and executing the attack on Pearl Harbor. Okay. And Joe Rochefort was the cryptologist who broke pre-World War II the Japanese diplomatic code, which we called magic. And then he would go on to break Purple, which was another version of that code. I think it's, and then would start to make the inroads into the JN-25, Japanese Navy 25 codes, which would lead late. It wasn't, they couldn't break it fast enough for Pearl Harbor, but would lead late. They would break it in time 6 months after Pearl Harbor to destroy the Japanese Navy in Midway. Okay. And then a year later, this MFer and his crew of intercept operators still are breaking the codes. And what do they get? He gets Yamamoto's flight schedule for inspections.
Wow. Okay. You're too fucking smart. You are wait. Fucking buff.
So he goes to his boss, Admiral Nimitz, right?
Chester
goes, yo, I've got the flight schedule for Yamamoto.
Wow.
Which is in range. Of course, they get on a map and they draw a range circle and they go, he's within range of our fighter aircraft. And Nimitz is like, you know, you're holding that man's death sentence in your hand. And he's like, yeah. And he goes, didn't you used to play poker with this guy? And he's like, bro, I sat out here with you and watched Pearl Harbor burn. This guy needs to die. And they plotted it up and sent 18 fighters, jumped Yamamoto, shot him out of the sky and killed him, and ended killed the most brilliant commander of the Pacific in World War II. This guy, Rochefort, has a lot of questions he has to answer for me.
Okay.
Like, I mean, come on. I mean, he's not, look, I could go back to, to meet Galileo, or I could go back to, wanting to meet Nefertiti to see how big her boobs are. I don't know. But all I know is that for someone in my field, right, a guy who's done, and this is what kills me, right? Because I get criticized a lot. They go, "You were just a linguist in the Navy." Yeah, well, so was so was Rochefort. He was a Japanese linguist who, here's what Nimitz said about him. Somebody insulted him in front of Nimitz because of his slacky uniform, and he says that man has killed more Japanese than any one person in the entire Pacific. Jeez. I was like, damn, Nimitz just vouched for you, bro. Yep. So just imagine the kind of questions we could have that, I'll go, hey, I'm from the future. I tried to break the JN-25 code for practice.
There you go. 2 final questions.
All right.
If you had to sum yourself up, Malcolm, in a few thoughts as a human being, what would you say?
Well, first off, I'm old enough now to know who I am. And I hope most people have get a good grip on their lives. The first word that pops into my mind, and this is principally because, I'm a widower.
I know.
So my life sucks anyway. So it's just that bad. Worst job in the world. But quite honestly, you have to be compassionate to do anything and to be and to consider yourself a human being who's worth their salt. I've just recently seen people who were just horrible. Did you see the Andrew Tate video where he's actually slapping a woman around? And this isn't love slaps, right? In the bedroom. This is him
scumbag. He's a scumbag.
Ever living hell out of her, and then beating her with a belt, right, to get her to say one thing on there. No wonder he's going to prison now for sex trafficking.
Yep.
You have to be a compassionate person. I was a great husband. I'm sorry, I was a terrible husband, but we're all up and down, right? But in the end, I was a good husband. I took care of my wife to the end,
right?
And I lived up to my vows. But more importantly, I understood that some of the the things that you value in life aren't 33 Bugattis or how much you can drink. It's about the moments that you live. Which brings me to real quick some of the criticism I'm going to want to address. I never address criticism that I get.
Go ahead.
But somebody, these guys who are out there like, you're stolen valor, you're not this, you're not that. And it's like, my record's out there. But here's where I reach fulfillment. I'm on the board of the International Spy Museum. There are people there, they know my record, right? These guys, there's like 100 ex-CIA officers. And the greatest compliment I received was from the man who could arguably be called the best intelligence officer in American history. And that, well, in modern American history. And that was Tony Mendez. And if you've seen the movie Argo, Ben Affleck.
Yeah.
And Tony Mendez complimented me. And he said, I really respect, what you've done. I really respect how much you care about our field. He goes, yes, you're a signals intelligence guy, but I won't let that get in my way. Because I was the minority hire. I was the SIGINT guy, and they're all human, right? And I worked in human also at one point. Black guy that speaks Arabic, right? So, but whenever these idiots come at me, I think I've been complimented by some of the greatest people, operators, collectors in the entirety of modern American intelligence. I don't need validation by anyone else. My wife and my kids and those people. So, you don't have to say thank you. People don't have to say thank you for my service, which I have sometimes say when I want to insult these right wingers. I go, oh, thank me for my service. But
it means nothing to them.
I've been validated. I feel when I go to these balls that we have, I wear my full dinner dress, senior chief cryptologist uniform. And it's like that old joke, God dresses like a chief when he wants to feel good about himself in heaven. So, so those are the aspects that matter to me the most.
Okay. And final question, what is your message or hope for humanity?
Oh, yeah. First, I just wrote a horrible book, right, called They Want to Kill Americans. Mm-hmm. And it's a study of the insurgency we're in now. It's not an insurrection. An insurrection is one thing. An insurgency is a series of things, both political, paramilitary, clandestine, planning to hurt other Americans, right? I don't want to be the Dalai Lama here. He already wrote his book about, how to live happy, how to be happy. But you really have to have a good heart. And I think most people have good hearts. There are really, truly black-hearted people out there. I've seen them. I want to say that I've dispatched more than a few. I say this, I said this throughout my military career, especially in Ukraine. There are people who must be destroyed. They have no understanding of humanity. Other humans to them are meant to be abused or taken advantage of or hurt or killed. I mean, we saw children killed out there with complete disregard. And then you have these crazies in our own country who are trying to say, oh, what I am is I follow the founding fathers. I'm a paragon of virtue. I'm a Philadelphian, a native Philadelphian. I lived, on the streets of our founding fathers. I lived where the founding documents were. I would go there and sit and seek, you could go to Washington Square. There's a sentence in there I love to talk about because it got me into the intelligence community. Freedom is a light for which many men have died in darkness, right? You and I, we worked in darkness.
Yeah, we did.
These guys, my favorite thing. I know I'm going long, but these.
No, you're not. I want you to talk. Go ahead.
Get these guys on Twitter who are like, I had this SEAL come after me, right? Since when did SEALs become the only job in the U.S. Navy?
Yeah.
Right? They're a hammer. And when I need to have something broke, the chain of command will decide whether they need to use that specific tool or an F-18 or whatever. But you get these guys out there and they go, I know everything you did, and you were a burn bag, and you were this, and you were that. Like this guy this morning said, PNG from a skiff.
Yeah.
Persona non grata from a skiff. It's like, you don't even understand the clearance access program.
No.
You got a clearance or you don't got a clearance.
And you ain't getting in the fucking skiff.
You don't have access.
Exactly. I ran skiffs. You don't get in.
I know. That was a good comment that you made about the SF-86.
Yeah. Yeah, go SF-86.
So these guys, they debase themselves, in order to hurt other people.
Yeah.
And like I said, I feel good about who I am and what I've done. and all I can do is help other people feel good. I see widowers on all the time. There was a guy from Fox News, my age, or at the time is in his mid-50s, and he lost his wife to cancer, same as my wife. And I was the first one over there, and I said, here's what you need to do. Damage control. You are going to a different world. You will not like this, right? But you have to maintain for your kids, your wife's honor, her legacy, all these things. There's nothing wrong with doing this. There's nothing wrong to being a good person. There's nothing wrong, despite the way that Trump has made it so that you should be insulted if you are good, that
Yes.
you should be
kindness is weak.
divided.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that Jesus Christ guy. They hate him.
Yeah.
But,
Malcolm, if Jesus Christ were, and I'm not being funny, though I know it's a funny line. If Jesus were to come back again and they said, we're going to crucify Trump or Jesus, Jesus is going 0 for 2 with the Trumpers. That's the truth. It's the truth. It's the truth. It's true. Hey, I want to close out.
Yeah.
But I want to say something, because you mentioned your wife, and it's so relevant to your story. I want to close out with something and then add some thoughts, and then we'll close out all together. I read the tweet, and I don't care if it's a couple of years ago. My condolences to you as a widower. I knew this doing research on you. I saw the funeral on your YouTube channel. Beautiful, a lot of people there, and your tweet where you said, and sadly she passed away of ovarian cancer on September 11th, 2019 at 4:52 p.m. It says this is your tweet, 15 years. I don't want to say her name because I don't want to mess it up. How do you say her name?
Maryse.
Okay. I knew I was going to say
French Canadian.
Yep. Okay. You said she was brilliant, landscape architect, devoted mother, fierce patriot, and a proud Navy wife, and the great, great love of my life. And that touched me. What also touched me as well, Malcolm, is I looked at the comments and I saw Frank Fagluzzi and associates of ours that we know, and other people too, blue checks and non-blue checks, but the love and the appreciation. So these assholes that attack you, remember how many people were giving you condolences and love that you don't even know, besides our associates around the world when you lost your wife, and take solace in that, because I don't give a fuck about these stupid people that attack us. Our service doesn't mean anything to them anymore, and they never even served in the fucking Salvation Army. So screw them. I want to close.
You know what I always say now? You got to watch out. I'm without guardrails.
And I'm the same way. This is what I want to end on, and I want to give you back the mic. I appreciate what you're doing. My show is all about moving humanity forward. That's why I wanted you on. I thank you for what you're doing. I see what you're doing. Okay. Continue to do it. Continue being yourself. Like you said, we don't have no fucking guardrails. I don't answer to anybody. My uniform of the day is my hoop earring and my fucking whatever I want to wear. So no one can tell me what to say and what to do. And that's the way it's going to be for the remainder of my life. 2 things. I want you to share your social media platforms for the viewers, please. Go for it.
Sure. As long as it lasts, you can find me at Malcolm Nance. That's MALCOLMNANCE on Twitter. Now I'm on Substack, Malcolm Nance, all one word, MALCOLMNANCE.substack.com. That's where you're going to find my best commentary. You can subscribe for free, or you can become a paid subscriber to get the good stuff. Oh, by the way, my GoPro war footage, I had a camera. I use my phone from time to time. It's going to be on Substack, so these losers will have to pay for the privilege.
Oh, well.
So, Instagram, malcolmnance.tapestry, and Facebook at Malcolm Nance, but that's a fan page.
Okay.
Any others are scams. There's
Okay.
a lot of scams out there of Nigerian princes trying to make money.
Of course. All right. On that note, I want to give you back the mic real quick, and I want you to close out with anything you want to say.
Oh, well, first off, we are in a battle for the soul of democracy, and every one of you is responsible. And if you're watching this, it means you care. And if you care, it means you're going to have to take action. Action can be anything, whether it's donating, whether it's getting out there. Just go out and make your voice heard. When I was involved long ago in that big waterboard debate, and they had taken my waterboard from Sears School and turned it into a torture device, when we were teaching at our school, it's a torture device. You know, I had this image in my head when I finally got on air and started talking about it. Norman Rockwell's Four Freedoms. And the one freedom of the guy standing up in a referendum, freedom of speech, is the one thing that we have, and you should really cherish that. But now you're going to have to start harnessing freedom from fear, freedom to worship, and of course, freedom from want, because all of those things are back with the people that we're opposed to. The enemies of democracy are also in our own country, and you can argue with them, you can try to recalibrate them, but the problem is much bigger than the Trump voters, the MAGA heads, the authoritarians, the right-wing Proud Boys, and all that. It's a global battle, so it's up to all of us to stand up and fight this battle. Okay,
I got one thing I need to tell you. Additional. Chat Jazz, I think you know who he is, the account Chat Jazz. You retweet a lot of his stuff. He does all of my clips. I want to ask you to do me a favor if you would. He's a big fan of yours and a supporter. He asked me to ask you, and I'm saying it on camera, Chat Jazz, so you know that I asked Malcolm. I can't tell him what to do, but I'm saying it on camera. He said, hey, can you ask Malcolm if he would follow me as long as we're still on Twitter?
Okay. I guess let me look now. Give him a I'll follow him now. All right.
All right, brother. Hey, thank you so much. We'll talk again soon. And when this comes out, I'll send you the link.
All right. Well, sorry we couldn't talk while I was in Ukraine. I was on boycott.
That's okay. You know what, though? Now that we got the 360 out, we can do shorter segments, so you'll have more time.
All right, man.
All right. Take care. God bless. Hey, folks, that's another episode of the Bad Brad Berkwitt Show on the Ringside Report web TV channel. Malcolm Nance, true patriot, a shipmate, and a 360 that I know you're going to enjoy. So make sure you share this on Twitter or whatever social media platforms you are on. Don't forget to subscribe. I greatly appreciate that as well. Spread the word, because these are the type of guests that I am always going to have on, because they're moving humanity forward. We don't move it backwards on this show like so many do on the right. Now, programming note, this Sunday, Hugo Lowe, regular on my show and a fan favorite, is coming back on to talk about hot J6 report stuff, committee stuff, and more. So make sure you check us out this Sunday, January 1st, 2023, my first show of the new year. All right, folks, and this is going to be my last one. So I want to say to everybody that has subscribed this year, everybody that's left comments, tweeted, retweeted, whatever it may be to support my show and my platform, I greatly appreciate each and every one of you. Because remember my meme, one voice is noise, several voices together is a movement. Never think that your Twitter follower number, as long as Twitter is around, is all important, because your voice with my voice and other voices together collectively, we can make changes and we can move humanity forward. So to everybody and your families in the United States and around the world, I wish you a happy new year, and may everything that life has to offer in 2023 come your way, the best of it. And remember, folks, every act of kindness is a little love we leave behind. Love you, Deb. Bad Brad out. Thank you for watching the Bad Brad Berkwitt Show. Please follow, subscribe, leave comments, forget about it, and move humanity forward.